Okay, so if we take your semi-private PT audience, next thing we obviously need to consider is what are your competitors doing. So we need to look at the whole marketplace. We have our proposition, and now obviously we need to look at the market and sort of gauge where we are. So are there any gyms locally that might be doing the same thing? If so, what is their messaging? Are there any particular trends? So is semi-group or sort of small group training, is that a trend? Is that how we sort of look to convert and keep customers long term? And then also, how are consumer buyer habits changing? Are they looking for sort of blocks of sessions? Are they looking for maybe just one-on-one and then so one session block? What might that look like? So we have our proposition. We also need to see how it sticks in the market and really where the opportunities for that sort of long-term growth would sit.
So do you want to give us a bit of an overview about near you? Well, let's go geographically to keep it simple. What are your key competitors?
We don't have any that do small group personal training right near us. Our closest would be about 2 and a bit miles away.
Okay.
But we do have a Pure Gym, Gym Group, JD Gyms, Nuffield, all within sort of like a mile and a half, who do kind of one-to-one PT, which is, I guess, who we're competing against.
It's also good to be considerate of other kind of competitors that might not be other gyms. So are there like online offerings? Are there any other kind of offerings that might, running anything like that? Any other clubs? It doesn't necessarily, your competitor doesn't necessarily have to be a version of what you're already doing. So another club, another facility. There can be other sort of like factors as well. So good to, but yeah.
Yeah, particularly because when then you consider going to consumer buying habits, this covers how they purchase, but a little bit about their thought process around that. So not just are they buying online, offline, do they want to speak to you, do they not, but going a bit further into, do they want everything in one click? And by everything I mean the physical side. We know that if you look at the current market trends, holistic, so that they want nutrition, mental wellness and physical wellness all in one. So thinking a little bit wider than just almost the simplicity of how do they buy, but actually going back into thinking about their psychographics, what do they want and how do they want to purchase all of that together, and then how seamlessly do they want that, or do they want a bit of friction, because do they want to understand a little bit more during that buying process. Okay, so to summarize, you've got a couple of competitors offering one-to-ones, your audience 30 to 50, 150 to 190 price point, so you're sitting up in the more expensive area. And what else we missed from the market? No one around you doing anything really holistically either.
And not
fabulous.
The price point.
Okay, so you understand your audience, you've understood the market a bit. Now it's a little bit about looking inside, because it's all well and good saying, okay, let's go and create that perfect proposition, let's create that perfect strategy. If there's 2 of you, you are not about to go and put out an out-of-home advert that's going to be seen by millions. You've got budget constraints, you've got people constraints. So would you be able to share a little bit, not necessarily about budget, but maybe internally, what skill sets do you have?
Yeah, so we've got 5 full-time employees who are our kind of general manager and then our coaches. They deliver the sessions themselves, and then I work with the manager to design the program and upskill then him and the coaches on their session delivery to try and bring every session to the same standard. And then for us, it's trying to look at where we can do extra things above and beyond kind of like a one-to-one personal trainer. So what like brands can we work with to bring more in for our customers without adding loads onto the budget as well. So
nice.
That's the question.
Yeah, so I'm going to take away from that. You've got some incredibly skilled staff, but none of them have specific marketing skill. Like probably very good at different elements of it, but none of them are trained in that area.
No, yeah, we've got no. So all of our staff are fitness people. We don't have like a sales and marketing team.
Perfect, and I think that's probably pretty common, or at least talking to a lot of people there is often quite common. So I think that's just crucial to have a think about, and I appreciate you'll know your staff better than anyone. You'll know actually, does someone have an incredible skill set at writing? Are they beautifully eloquent? Are they great on camera? Can you stick them up on some social bits? Like, there's a lot of skill sets, but you need to really think actually from a budget perspective and a resource, what is feasible? Because like I say, with the best plan in the world, you're not going to be able to follow through if you don't have the right people in place or the right skill sets in place. Is a better way to say that.
Okay, so positioning. So this is something that is often missed, and it's such a fundamental part of the process. I think often we can assume that we've sort of properly positioned our product, but often we haven't. We think we've sort of done that earlier in the stages. So how are we positioning to that target audience? So obviously with that semi-private PT example, obviously we're at a slightly higher price point. What are we really getting for that money? How are we different? What's the market position? Who are we targeting? And all those things that we kind of talked about earlier. So we're looking at, we need to know who we're selling it to, who they are, what they really want, who we're obviously versing in a competitive market. And then we can also think about something that we like to talk about, which is the benefit ladder. The benefit ladder is a series of steps that's designed to take you closer and closer and kind of learn more about your customer as you climb it. So we would look at things like signaling as the bottom part of that product positioning statement. So signaling is kind of not just what you say, but also where you say it and who you're saying it to. We would look at things like product features. So does your gym have a car park, for example? Like, can people actually come and park? Can they access your gym properly? Then we need to think about benefits to the customer. So are you a 24/7 gym? Like, do people have access? So really just kind of thinking about all those little parts of your product, every single element, who they're attracting, who you're talking to, is absolutely fundamental and something that we would really urge you to take the time to do. At the end of the slide, you will have some extra kind of bits and bobs to take away on positioning, because it's something we could do a talk about all by itself. But really, I would urge you to kind of think about that sort of benefit ladder, and obviously we can share that with you afterward as a fundamental point of your strategy for positioning.
I think it's just important to note here, so, and we'll go through in a second exactly the positioning that for your gym, but you really only want one or two of these max. You want to have at the core of your offering just one or two of them, potentially for different audiences. So we'll go through the example now of, so two, we already know it's 30 to 50s within Edinburgh, you said, right? Edinburgh, I was about to say Glasgow. Within the Edinburgh region, and the who, we know a little bit more about them. We know that they're willing to pay the higher price point. Going with that age group, you probably say they're parents, so they have a family life, working careers, and then what, your gym as you described it. So that PT sessions is open fully for the public, right? But you just have the addition of that PT service. Focusing a bit on that with HYROX elements, the performance elements, and then versus. So the interesting thing here to remember is it doesn't have to be a strict competitor. The really clear example, not from this industry, is the biggest versus for banks is people doing nothing. And actually you could almost apply that to this industry and say the biggest versus are they going to the pure gym? It's, are they bothering to go to the gym? Bothering may be a bit harsh, but are they going to the gym? So the versus isn't always a competitor, which is really important to remember, because if you just go after your competitors, you're just fighting a war for the same audience, and actually there's a lot more out there. And then there is, and then do you want to work through the benefit ladder?
Yes, slightly nervous about time, but yes, we can do. So I've made some notes for your gym example. So we would obviously, as I mentioned, we would start obviously with that sort of signalling part. So where you show up, where are you saying it to? What does that kind of look like at the moment? So sort of where are you saying these things? Are you kind of, where have you kind of told people about your brand through social?
Yeah, because paid ads are very trackable and very reliable. And we can then capture a lot of information as well. We've tried some kind of, I guess we call like guerrilla marketing stuff, but it's so difficult to measure and track it, that we struggle to know whether it's worth the budget.
It is, obviously guerrilla marketing can be difficult, but you're right, if you have a trackable. But I would always suggest kind of doing a combination of both where possible. Brand marketing generally obviously is notoriously difficult to track, but I think it's always that thing of having to sort of keep doing a bit of brand building over here, a bit of more sort of paid or marketing over here as well, just a combination of both, because at the end of the day your brand will really be the thing that kind of enables you to grow. So I would advise to keep doing that where possible. And this is a really important point on the ladder. The next point from signaling is your entry point. So that's all about, why would people come to you? Like, why would I go to your facility versus either doing nothing at home, or why would I go to a pure gym, for example? What might that look like
so for us,
you?
our slogan's elite for everyone.
Yeah,
so what we say is
love that.
just because you're not the best, you're not a professional, doesn't mean you shouldn't have the best coaches, the best environment, the best
Absolutely.
to allow you to reach your goal as quickly as possible.
Is that like accessible sort of athleticism, elitism? Yeah, that's a really nice kind of point. And if that's something that you can own, that gives you your thing. I think we obviously think about sort of how that's relatable to people, because the word elite could potentially, I understand the meaning behind it, could be a little bit divisive or a little bit exclusive, perhaps potentially. But it's interesting if you can get some sort of stronger messaging behind that also. And then, as I mentioned, the product features. So this can be kind of really basic features, so stuff that not necessarily isn't beneficial, but the physical things in your gym. So is there a car park? Do I have to bring all my stuff like towels and all that kind of thing? What would be the sort of unique features that you might have at your studio?
We push with the SPPT is that everybody gets their own one-to-one accountability coach as well.
Nice.
Who works with them as an online coach throughout the process. So it's not just face-to-face PT sessions. Our team then supporting them in the background, and that's a USP for us in our market.
That is a good USP.
That sounds fun. Definitely want to come and have a go. And then leading on from that then is obviously the benefit. So you've obviously mentioned you have a customer, so you have an accountability coach, which is your feature. What the benefit of that is probably longer term interaction, longer term engagement, better retention. So that might be your benefit. And it's really important where you can to really remember about separating features and benefits. I think it's very, very easy sometimes to just lead with feature-based marketing. Where we want to really do that is say, okay, we have a car park, so you can actually come and make it easy, and it takes that bit of friction out of the workout. So stuff like that, really important. And then this, I think, will be something that you're probably doing really strongly already. The next, we're nearly at the top of the ladder, the emotional association. So what might that's kind of how people sort of feel about you, really. So and it's that difference between I'm really looking forward to going to the gym. I mean, does anyone skip to the gym? I don't know, even 30 years on, I still don't. But how do people feel about your brand is really important. Do you have sort of any sentiment analysis or anecdotal stuff?
Yeah, so we do kind of quarterly member feedback surveys.
Brilliant.
And the biggest one that we're looking for is how people perceive the value for money that they're getting from the experience. And we try and get everybody at 8 out of 10 or above.
Nice.
In that, and we do quite well at that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes the difficulty with that is you're capturing people that are still your members.
Yeah.
So sometimes you miss where they slide from like an 8 to a 7 and then from a 7 to stopping paying at the bank.
Yes.
So it's figuring out how we...
And that's probably the more important.
Yeah.
I feel that I always learn more when people aren't happy. It's really easy for someone to say everything's great and they score 10 and the next month they've left your gym and you don't really understand why. So absolutely what you just picked up on, that's sort of like 5, 6, 7 out of 10, they're probably the ones that you will learn the most from. And I think if you can turn things around there, obviously engagement, things like that will follow, but I think that's really interesting. And then the last one is your socio-economic purpose. And this sounds a little bit marketing fluffy, but bear with. It's really about the purpose of your brand. So why you started that business in the first place. And that has to come from the top all the way down to the bottom. Live it, breathe it. Obviously yours is rather clear. You've kind of gone through it with us already, but it'd be good to just have a recap of why you started your gym, why you started your business, and really what the purpose is. Like, why do you get up? I've been a PT, I get it. Why are we getting up at 4 a.m, and getting home at 10? Why are we doing it?
So for me, it was working in Virgin Active as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
I just got incredibly frustrated with the service that my PT clients got when they weren't in that session with me.
Any Virgin Active people in the room, it's the job, not the gym. Let's be really clear on that one. Not the bank.
So I just got fed up with it, and then I'll be completely honest as well. It was a way to make more money, not have to be a coach for the rest of my life.
And in terms that's a personal purpose then. In terms of what you would want your members to feel, because what might that sort of look like? Just trying to make it more customer focused.
So our mission is to create Scotland's favourite destination for fitness.
There we go.
Wellness.
Yeah. Lovely. And the word I know we've got a lot more to do, but that favourite is an interesting choice of word, because it can mean I could love your classes, someone else might love the fact that it's easy to get to, all of those things. So it's really lovely that you've kind of almost left it a bit open so people can make it their own version of favourite. But yeah, that's the benefit ladder, a very whistle-stop tour through it, and we do have a takeaway for you to kind of go through that in more detail.
We'll put it all into an example so it's clearer written down.
Yes.
Okay, so then reviewing your appreciate that wasn't a full strategy. When you come to it, you're pulling in the product, you're pulling in the business strategy, all of that good stuff. But in terms of getting to the point where you have a solid proposition that then sits at the heart of all your marketing efforts, which we're about to go on to the tactic bit in a second, you're in a good spot. You know who your audience is and you know what you're saying and what's at the core of that, which is great. The point to remember here is exactly what we just touched on, feedback, is if you go about doing that every few months, you will have zero consistency. And if you have zero consistency, your brand equity, there we go, thank you. Equity, it just doesn't hold. And there's a lot of data out there at the moment showing that actually the brands, does anyone remember the Ribena adverts with the little, is he a blackcurrant? The little blackcurrant guy? They've played the same advert over and over again for about 5 years, took a break, brought it back, and everyone still knows it. The moment that it comes on the screen, it's got one of the highest brand recognitions, and it's because it's consistent. So staying consistent is absolutely key. However, if you also don't do that every few years, you'll realise all your competitors have gone flying past you and you're no longer in the place that you wanted to be. So it is important to keep it top of mind, but not do it too regularly.
I think it's really tempting to think, oh, we must do something new. We haven't done anything new. Like Anne just said, consistency. If you think about brands like Kit Kat, for example, they have had one of the most strongest consistent brand positionings of any brand that I can sort of think of. So yes, you can refine things, of course you can, but there is really nothing wrong with being consistent and really owning what you do. In fact, I'd suggest that's more powerful than any other kind of marketing strategy you could look at. Consistency, simplicity, all that stuff.
And to be fair, that's exactly what the data is showing. So if anyone does, we'll actually send the link out. There's an incredible podcast by a gentleman called Mark Ritson. It actually focuses in on Kit Kat, all about that consistency element. So we'll include the link to that as well. Okay, so done that work. Now we're going to move on to maybe the more exciting bit that everyone wants to do, which is the tactic. So actually doing the marketing efforts.
Oh, that's me. Okay, so setting objectives. Obviously, what challenges are you facing? It might, and that can obviously be a myriad of reasons. It'd be great to hear from any sort of gym owners what challenges you might be facing. We all know the ones about retention. Are there any sort of other specific challenges that people might be facing as gym owners? Obviously, we can talk about retention, of course, member attraction. Are there anything other sort of specific examples, costs, for example, overheads, anything like that you might be facing? Be good to hear.
If someone says brand equity, I'm going to be impressed.
So with regard to setting objectives, that's kind of something we might want to focus on. What challenges are we facing, and then really what are we trying to achieve, and perhaps where those challenges might stop us doing that. So members are churning, how do we aid retention? Can we do something as simple as engage people when they come through the door? And I know that is absolute basics, but again, it's sometimes getting those basics really strong that can really help us with all of our efforts. And then not enough new members, obviously aiding acquisition. Obviously we want to kind of focus on this where we can, because this is ultimately a little bit cheaper than attracting new. But what can we do to that? Do we need to look at our offering? Do we need to look at the customer experience? Whatever that might look like. So those objectives are really key to set before we start doing anything, before we get onto social, any other like outreach stuff. What are we actually trying to do? And it's an often missed step.
So to keep it consistent, do you want to help us pick retention or acquisition?
Do we show our hands in the room?
Oh yeah, retention or acquisition, what would you rather us talk about for the next few slides? Retention? Acquisition? Okay, sorry guys, acquisition won that one. Okay, so we'll go down the road. So just a quick one, everyone knows about SMART objectives, I'm sure, but we're going to go and say, assume the objective is to acquire 10% new members in the next 2 months. There we go. Which actually, to be fair, it's January, so hopefully that's a bit easier than normal. Okay, channel selection. So going back to think about, and this is where you go back to your proposition and you think about that who, and then you tie in the objectives and the what. So who, we know it's 30 to 50-year-olds from Edinburgh. I appreciate that's quite basic level, but we're going to keep it simple. What the objective is, we want to acquire them, we want them to come to our gym, become a member. How? Okay, then it's the channel selection. So we'll go on in a second to some channel examples, but we literally have, shall I do it now for ease?
Yeah, go for it.
These aren't even all of it. This is, you could go on for 2 or 3 pages of lists. And it doesn't even touch upon if you want to include customer experience and customer service within your marketing touch points. But the point is, if it doesn't match the who and it doesn't match the objective, you are pumping money into nothing, fundamentally. In fact, it might even be money, you're pumping resource into nothing. So if you're saying, in your scenario, you've got some incredible members of staff and you're asking them to do some marketing efforts, and they've gone out and they've got TikTok going, which is phenomenal, but when you do look at, it's growing in that age range, but you look at that age range, it's probably not the best channel that you could use. However, there is a phenomenal, beautiful coffee shop just down the road where they all go afterwards to get a coffee. Everyone in the area goes there for a coffee. Perfect. Let's do a bit of work and a bit of a partnership with them, and you're hitting so many more of your audience. So it's really thinking about the who in this one. So Hannah's going to run through a couple of examples on which ones of these and maybe a few others would be good for the acquisition.
Like Anne said, I'm slightly conscious we're going to run out of time. With regard to some of these, it's not, yes, absolutely the who is important, but also kind of where your audience are. So like Anne, what I mentioned about the coffee shop is a really good example. So we're not going to spend, for example, loads of money partnering with an event that's got nothing to do with where our audience are. So really, before you kind of just start thinking, right, I'm going to go on this channel, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, investigate it first. Check out if your target audience are actually going to be there. Partnerships, I'm a big fan of these, massive fan, because I think sometimes there can be a reluctance to partner with people, but I genuinely think we're stronger together and there's probably mutual benefit. So looking into sort of partnering with local businesses, you could even partner with like a local business park, for example, who are close to your gym, who might have hundreds of people that are able to walk straight over to your gym. You could do some work there. Sponsoring events that you're targeting that your audience are going to be at is another brilliant one. Obviously, we can look at things like sort of podcasts. And again, whilst you might not be able, some of these are difficult to measure, like you might not be able to directly track a podcast interview to your membership, but it all just kind of builds that brand awareness. So working out where your audience are and meeting them where they are is a really, really powerful one. If we're looking at acquisition, also things like even SMS, people say that text messages is dead. I'm not sure I necessarily believe that, but just that little reminder, things like that, because you never know if you just keep yourself front of mind and it's a little bit more reactive, things like that can be really powerful. But just always being front of mind for acquisition, and it might not happen immediately, it might take sort of a quarter or two for them to convert, but just doing everything you can, particularly in those examples I just gave, to keep people front of mind is going to be a really powerful strategy.
And Hannah touched on it slightly there, and we mentioned it earlier about so in this objective, yes, we are trying to do acquisition, which is very much that transactional type of marketing. So, SMS work, email, I know people argue about email, it works fundamentally. Well, maybe it doesn't for you, it's worth a try, but it also comes down a bit to when we looked at the messaging earlier on that proposition, is your proposition coming through within this your marketing assets? Because if it's not, maybe it's not the channel, maybe it's how you're approaching it. So there are considerations when you see whether it works or not. But for acquisition, like I say, it's very much about the direct effort. We cannot forget about brand. So if you put all of your eggs into solely SMS, email, and member referral, that's another quick win scenario, particularly for lower budgets. Where's the brand? And there's an incredible chart, and we'll include this as well. I'm going to try and get this right, where it shows that if you do acquisition efforts, you see it go like this in terms of this is the impact. So it'll just go like that, and you'll drop, and then you'll have impact again, it will drop. Whereas if you include brand efforts in, it'll be very slow and it won't peak anywhere near as much, but over time it will get to up here. And if you do both together, it's tenfold. And actually, by doing brand alone, you can have those short-term wins, but the research says if you do solely quick wins, only no brand, it has no long-term effect. So you need to also consider a little bit about that channel mix. Okay, so reviewing our tactics, I feel like we actually strayed from your example a little bit, but let's say we did go with that coffee shop scenario, a member referral scenario, and a really good email campaign where you've gone and spoken to your members. You've got you've done a bit of data capture, so wider than your general audience. So you've got a whole new set of prospecting, and you might get this by, maybe it's through socials and you're offering them something like a free class, or maybe you're offering them the opportunity to talk to a trainer, or maybe you've gone out to work with a number of partners that have allowed you to access their database in return for you offering them something, but you've got all of that new data. So then you do a really good email campaign where you, based on what your members have told you, you said, okay, these are the real wins for them, and embedding that into your messaging, keeping that proposition at the heart of it. So they could be 3 quick strategies for acquisition. The point, but make sure you measure it. Because say if you did go ahead and do that, you might see a sudden spike, absolutely phenomenal. Where's it coming from? If you haven't put it in place so you can measure it. So emails, open rate, click-through rates. Through, what else did we say? SMS, same, open rate, click-through rates. And through the partnerships, maybe it's because you've got a QR code with that coffee shop, so people actually scan that QR code, measuring that. You need just to be able to make sure you can measure it and quickly iterate, because you might see that, if your SMS didn't work at all and it was flat, can you try an A/B split on your next one? One might peak, one might be flat, or it might be flat again. You don't know. But if you keep measuring, you'll keep finding out. And that one, compared to previously with the strategy, that's every few years, well, probably 1 to 2 years, tactics consistently and all the time. Always measuring, always checking, always rethinking. And then a couple of thoughts to end on. So this one, I think everyone always says, you can't do tactics without strategy, and they equate it to war. And then we were thinking, well, actually it's a bit like a gym program, and we should have started with this. It's like just going to the gym and lifting weights without a program, you're probably not going to really get the results that you want. So make sure you've got the program, which is the strategy, before going to the gym. If you want to point a couple of these out, Hannah, as well?
Yeah, sure. Don't rely on a single channel is really key. So just making sure that you're kind of spread, like we talked about, spreading your efforts is really important. Particularly when it comes to social, I would encourage you to have, and again, I fully appreciate time in the day, but ensuring that you have a different, maybe it's the same message or relatively the same piece of content, but if you can, do try and look at just repurposing what you're using. So don't blanket spread the same piece of content across social, for example. You'll be speaking to very different people on LinkedIn that you might be on Instagram, and it needs to kind of reflect that. So not relying on a single channel is really important, not pouring all your eggs into social, into paid, for example, but also making sure that the content is different. Member feedback, we touched on that, absolutely. Member feedback is key, and like we touched on, you will learn more from those sort of 4 to 7s out of 10s than you will from your 10 out of 10, so definitely listen to those. We talked about consistency is key. It might feel like you're not doing anything new or exciting, and I know as marketers we always want to try new stuff, but honestly, consistency is cool. I promise you, it's one of the best things you can do. It's cool, keep showing up, keep doing it, keep building it. And I'll let Anne close up.
Yeah, I think that might be the last slide. Yeah. If you want us to be able to send you a bit of an overview of anything like this and all the little bits, I'm going to have to write down what I promised to send afterwards straight away. Just put your email in, and we'll make sure we send you that. I guess I actually don't know what the time is. Forgive me, I'm wearing my switch, not my watch.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to shout.
Nice.
If not, we are around, and you may contact us post event also.
Yeah.
I knew it.
How's AI going to fit into marketing? How are you going to put AI into marketing?
So that's a really interesting question. I would suggest that it's already here. I think a lot of people talk about the future of AI, and it's already coming in now. I think I'm not necessarily someone who is frightened of it. I use it. I think it will be massively, massively helpful for gym owners, because it's going to free up so much of your time with regard to things like copy. It can help you with kind of things like strategy even. The key with AI and marketing is knowing things like the correct prompts to use. Things like that can be really helpful. I would encourage you to embrace it as much as possible. I'm not sure that it will have necessarily negative impacts. I would think it will only sort of fundamental, but I think we're at the yeah, I think it's got a very, very short answer to a very long question. I think it will only massively benefit gym owners, definitely with a time and resource perspective. I don't know if you've got any thoughts.
I was going to say, this is an insight into some friends I have in the space that say that how they use it most in marketing, not necessarily for this sector, is actually with the data analysis. So they'll say, we are using these 4 channels, we've gone and done all of this, we're seeing this across this one, and this one. What are we missing, kind of thing? Or what does that suggest? What does that suggest from the consumer, etc.? And gives it that context, and it starts to pull out. For the example that I was thinking of, it was a health food brand. They basically was just like, one for social, they were like, it's seasonal, but actually what you've missed is 1, 2, 3. And they started to adapt to it, and you have to be careful putting data into AI, just as a heads up, because it is your company data. Remember, it's a shared platform, and it does give the data away. But they started to really see a change in the direction for their socials based off of it, purely because they didn't have that skill set to analyse the data to that in-depth knowledge. So that's a really good use for it, I think, because actually, a lot of people have time to do the marketing, but we forget that it's just the same amount of time if you actually want to assess it properly.
So yeah, strategy and assessment, definitely.
Any other questions? Yes. Oh, I thought
Ready
you
for
were-
lunch? Thanks so much for listening, everybody. See you later.